and he just hasn't done that, whether it's injuries or, whatever the case might be. He hasn't done that, whereas Brandin Cooks already has, in my estimation, and I don't expect him to take any type of step backwards. It might, like Joe said, with the way this offense is constructed and getting the ball to the open man, and Jared Goff does an excellent job of that, and Sean McVay does a great job of scheming, in that direction. It may not be that he gets 1,000 yards, receiving and 80 catches, but that doesn't. At the end of the day, I think he will be effective in this offense and will help elevate this offense. So I'd rather have him than Watkins in that first round pick.
Yeah, we'll do this first take or ESPN style here because I'll take the other side of this, just for because if you look at it, really, I think today's deal, I think it's pretty easy to look at it and say, they got to that number because Watkins got out on the open market, and that's the number he got. And, he got his $16 million for 3 years. And so you wonder, the one piece of information we really don't have in this is exactly what the Rams' final best offer was to Watkins. If it was in the 9, 10, 11 range, maybe they weren't high enough, because that first rounder to me is a big deal. I mean, when you're talking about going a couple of years without a first rounder, not being able, and obviously they're young enough where, they have so much young talent in the team, maybe it doesn't hurt them like it would other teams, but you give up that first rounder, that's an elite young player you have under control for a long time. And I do think these two guys are both kind of, even though, you got to give Watkins some demerits for, his health, his inability to play. Cooks has played 16 games over the past 3 years every year, and Watkins has had some, foot troubles. He's had some he's not been able to stay on the field the way that Brandin has. And so I think that first rounder tips it to me. I would rather take Watkins on that short 3 for 48 and keep the first rounder, because I do think they're talent-wise, they're both in that same level. I both think they're kind of second-tier receivers. Obviously Cooks is probably the better player based on production and based on health. And you got to Sammy Watkins. There's a reason why Kansas City paid him, because he does have upside. And, that role in this offense is it's I think Sammy Watkins was kind of an underrated player for the Rams last year, even though, because you just look at his stats and he wasn't as productive as other people were. But I think his presence out there was a significant part of why, Todd Gurley had such a big year, why, the whole offense worked. They need somebody, that's why they spent that first round pick to get him, because they need to get Cooks, because they need, somebody in that role. And so I think that, the reason why Cooks got so much was because, Watkins got out and they lost him and they had to fill that role. I think, it was kind of an ABC type of situation where they all got tied together. So I think, but having that extra first rounder in the bank kind of tips it from me from that perspective. But, that's me fighting uphill on this one.
Yeah, that's wicked hard because, as someone that saw a lot of these first round picks up close and personal at the Senior Bowl, I mean, I definitely can understand that side, but I could also understand, the side of Brandin Cooks. I think you know what you're getting. You're getting that consistent production. You have Sean McVay endorsing this guy. I mean, this is somebody that apparently he wanted when he was, with the Redskins. So there's that also. But I also say this. I think the Rams drafted really well for not picking until the third round. I think they got somebody that could be a bookend left tackle when you look at Noteboom. I think Jamil Demby, I know he's only a sixth rounder, but I really think he can start someday. And then, obviously you get, the kid from Michigan State to be the center of the future. And then you get guys like Okoronkwo and John Franklin Myers, who I really like. So, I like what they did. And I almost feel as though, say you have that first rounder, I just feel like that first rounder would have ended up replacing a LaMarcus Joyner or somebody, because if you pick Sammy Watkins to sign, I know it looks different now because the Rams, signed Brandin Cooks, but I almost feel like it was kind of either or. Maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like it's either or in that case, because if you spend money on Watkins long term, then I guess you could still tag Joyner, but I don't know. Just to me, I felt like that was an either-or decision, and they chose LaMarcus over Sammy Watkins, or at least putting their full, their full attention towards just making sure that LaMarcus was going to be on this 2018 roster, whereas Sammy was not tagged, and they had negotiations, but they ultimately decided to trade for Cooks. So I feel like that would have been a free, another safety. Just maybe I'm wrong in that sense, but I don't know. It's so hard.
Well,
I honestly couldn't pick a side.
You can also look at it as, if you're paying Watkins, what's he making, $60 million this year, or somewhere around that number?
Yeah,
that's supposed to be $8 million that you're paying. Brandin Cooks this year. I'll take you right to the defensive line and Ndamukong Suh. Who's to say that they would have been able to sign him under those circumstances, especially if you would have wanted to have kept, LaMarcus Joyner in tow. So, I think, if you look at it from the big picture perspective, loading up on the draft next year, yes, you gave up a first-round pick, but you got a better player than Sammy Watkins, I believe, anyway, to replace him. Plus, you were able to get Suh. You were able to bring back LaMarcus Joyner, at least on a one-year deal. You still have room now to re-sign. None of the money that was given to Cooks in any way takes away from Aaron Donald. So I think that in the whole scheme of things, it might have worked out better this way. I actually think it did.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a really good point. It also, goes back to the fact that, the Rams kind of had to trade the first rounder because of that free space, like you mentioned. So,
right.
That does free up, $4 or $5 million. First rounders are expensive, and the Rams didn't have a bad first round pick for, being in the playoffs. I think it was 23rd. So, it still would have been, quite a bit. But, moving on, we talked about, obviously, our overall thoughts on the situation. We talked about this hypothetical what if. But what does this mean for the rest of the players on the roster that could be in need of contracts? Because when you look at, the acquisitions they made, they added, a Marcus Peters. They added, Aqib Talib and Ndamukong Suh. Now, Marcus Peters is the one that stands out of that group, that somebody that is going to be a long-term piece, hopefully. So that's, somebody that's going to need to be re-upped. And then you have Todd Gurley, his recent, comments coming out and saying, who wants like $80 million. And then, obviously you have Jared Goff and, down the line, if this Corey Littleton kid ends up panning out, you have a pretty good starter at linebacker that you'd have to pay, and then John Johnson. So, there's all different guys that are going to want to get paid, Cooper Kupp down the road. What does this mean for all of them? I'll start with Joe this time.
Well, actually this would be Vinny, had the line of the day out there about this, that they're, that they, they're unrelated. So I think we know what Vincenzo's going to give us, but my whole thing is in terms of the, to me, I'll turn this a little bit, not so much in that, the guys that are out there that, have to get the business done this year, but my whole thing is they have, 3 starting, receivers that are now tied up for the next 3 years. So, that you're going to have some continuity and consistency in that receiving core. And the big question for what's that mean for somebody on the outside looking in is now, is there enough space? Is there enough room in this offense for Josh Reynolds, to kind of make his NFL career to thrive and to show what he has? And I think that's maybe, not to kind of take a U-turn on the question, but, to me, that's, now that they've got their receiving core set, can a fourth receiver, that we had such high expectations for, is he going to be able to kind of carve out, maybe a role on, in the red zone or something like that, or maybe, somebody, obviously, if he gets lucky, maybe somebody gets hurt. But that's what I wonder is, are we going to get to see the best out of Josh Reynolds simply because there may not be enough reps for him out there?
Yeah, and as it relates to, I think Josh will I think Sean McVay will create, some sort of a niche role for Josh Reynolds. I'm excited to see that because I think he's got a lot of potential and can be an asset even in a limited role. But bigger picture even than that, by getting certainty with Brandin Cooks, now you have the and assuming, let's just assume that they re-signed Aaron Donald, which I believe that they will. Now that franchise tag becomes a little bit more flexible as well. You wouldn't, let's say they didn't get Brandin Cooks done this year, and let's say they weren't able to come to a long-term extension at the end of this year, and let's say Aaron Donald was under contract. Now you have to decide between Brandin Cooks and maybe a LaMarcus Joyner, who you might want to use the franchise tag on a second time next year. So it kind of moves that thing down the road a little bit. Cooks no longer plays into that, so that creates a little bit more certainty and a little bit more flexibility, from that perspective. But I think that, I do believe Aaron Donald gets done. We'll see what happens with LaMarcus Joyner. They value him as a player, and one thing that now works in their favor, if we are talking about that franchise tag again, is that the safety franchise tag number is less than a wide receiver franchise tag number. So you kind of have an idea now of what you might be looking at to bring Joyner back while addressing some other players. So it just helps to be able to get this certainty taken care of now, get a 24-year-old wide receiver under contract for the next 6 years, alongside, like you said, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods for the next 3 years, three very young, very productive, potentially productive wide receivers in the fold. Those are all, great signs for the Rams right now, and they have a lot of work to do. Rob Havenstein is going to be a free agent. Jamon Brown, I think, is a free agent after this year. Todd Gurley is going to be dealt with soon. Marcus Peters is going to be Roger Saffold. So there's a lot of boxes to check off, and anytime you can get one of them checked off as decisively as they do with Brandin Cooks, that's a good thing.
Yeah, because I stepped on your line. Let me quote directly from @Daily News Vinny here. The timing of this is a response to somebody talking about how, AD should be, infuriated to watch the team prioritize signings of newcomers over the big star. Vinny's response was, the timing of signings is in no way indicative of the simultaneous nature in which negotiations take place. What a line there. There's a lot of syllables. If you think the Rams told AD to wait his turn, I'm not sure what to tell you. So I think that's when I was talking about the line of the day on Twitter. That's how, obviously all these things are kind of happening just because they're happening simultaneously doesn't mean they're all on the same timeline. And, they're putting all this together. And like they've said throughout the offseason, they have a schedule to get Donald done. And, we'll see if that's actually true here coming up.
Yeah, we will. And before I go into that, I do want to just say one quick thing about the Brandin Cooks thing. I actually think, crazy enough, that signing him now is honestly going to save them more money in the long run. I think they got him before he's about to fully ascend into what he can become in this league. And I just think, obviously he was with, Tom Brady and he was with Drew Brees, but I think this offense probably fits him the best. And I'm just really excited to see what Sean McVay does with him and just the ability for him to grow with a young quarterback as opposed to being with a veteran. Like, Jared Goff and him are both young. So, they're going to be able to grow together and everything. I'm excited to see this. And, I think they made a smart decision signing him now as opposed to waiting and possibly seeing that price tag go way up after, Odell Beckham Jr. gets paid or something.
Jake, you've already compared him to Antonio Brown today. I mean, let's leave some level of expectations going forward. We know where you stand on this, buddy. That's you expect numbers.
But the point is well taken because every time that market goes a little bit higher, even the guy right below is going to get paid more than he would have right now. So I think if you could take care of these type of things, you take care of them as soon as possible.
I absolutely agree. And, speaking of something that the Rams should take care of as soon as possible, just kidding. Aaron Donald is